Hi, everybody. My name is Natasha, and I work for a nonprofit organization called LEAF, which stands for the Local Enhancement and Appreciation of Forests. And at LEAF, I supervise our residential planting programs, and I'm also an ISA certified arborist. And today, I am so happy to be able to speak to you about trees in our urban forest, more specifically, the economic value that they bring. So let's get started. Okay, so as I mentioned, LEAF is a nonprofit organization that teaches people about trees, and we really try hard to get people excited about the urban forest. We plant trees on private property, native trees, and we educate people on how to care for those trees on their property or in their communities. So a large part of our work is focused on community engagement and tree stewardship. So today I want to speak to you about the urban forest, the benefits and value that the urban forest brings, the status of the urban forest, which is continuously changing, and what you can do as individuals and as a larger community to help enhance and protect our urban forest. So what is the urban forest? It really is all of the trees, shrubs, flowers, grasses that are found in a city. And so this includes ravines, natural areas, parks, school grounds, green roofs, backyards, front yards, and you can actually think of all of that as an interacting ecosystem. So it includes really the plants, soil, wildlife, and humans all interacting in that area. A study that was done in 2018 showed that there's 11.5 million trees, which results in about 28.4% of forest coverage. And when you break that down, that's about 4.6 million that are located in natural areas and parks, and then about 0.6 million, which is on city streets, and then most of it, 6.3 million, is on private property. So that's about 55%, and this land is privately owned. So what are some benefits that are gained from a healthy urban forest? There are many. The first one I'm going to talk to you about is trees improving air and water quality. So they remove carbon dioxide and air pollutants. And so annually about 973 tons of pollution is actually removed from trees, which equals to about 37.6 million value. They also improve the quality of water and act like kind of a big sponge that soaks up water from storms. And so what this does is reduce stormwater runoff, and that helps mitigate flooding risks and lessens the load on green infrastructure. So things like overflow in our sewage systems. So annually, 1.1 million cubic meters of rainwater is intercepted, and that is the value of about 4.8 million of avoided runoff. So trees also combat climate change. They absorb and store carbon dioxide, and they do this in their roots, trunk, leaves, and in the soils that they grow in as well. And so by doing this, they reduce the amount of carbon dioxide that is produced. And in terms of carbon storage, that's about 1 million tons that's stored at a value of 125.8 million. And that's about 1,500 tons captured, which is $4 million. At a value of $4 million. So trees also reduce the urban heat island effect. And what this is a phenomenon where the urban area is significantly warmer than surrounding rural areas. And this is because of human activity and impermeable surfaces such as concrete that is predominantly in those areas. And in urban areas, the streets can actually get as hot as 54 degrees Celsius. So trees really reduce this effect by providing shade that cools the surrounding areas, with about 10% of shade equaling to about 2 to 4 degrees less in temperature. And so trees also reduce the urban heat island effect by evaporating water from their leaves throughout the day, which cools the tree and cools the area surrounding the tree as well. And all of this really translates into energy savings in the summer. So in this image here, you can see the sort of correlation between high temperatures and tree canopy cover in the urban environment. So the areas where you see a lot of red, that really translates to those areas being above average surface temperature, where you see the areas that are kind of lighter in color, they're below average in surface temperature. So there's a lot of areas, you know, this is a map of the GTA, so a lot of areas where the surface temperature is significantly high. So trees also can reduce road maintenance, improve road safety, and reduce noise by absorbing and reflecting sound. So they shade streets and they protect the concrete from heating up and slowing its deterioration over time. So a road that has about 20% of shade will have its condition improved by 11%, which is about a 60% of savings for resurfacing those roads within over 30 years. So tree-lined streets also can calm traffic, and that's because the streets appear to be more narrow, and they encourage slower driving. And they also act as a barrier between pedestrians and drivers, so it increases safety as well. And it also can reduce road rage just because of the appearance of the streets, you know, creating a really beautiful vision while you're driving. They also reduce noise by absorbing and reflecting sound. So wide belts of trees and soft grounds can reduce local noise by up to 50% in neighborhoods. So trees also provide a lot of health benefits. One of these is UV protection. So it really can reduce things like skin cancer by acting like a natural sunscreen. It also improves physical and mental health by encouraging outdoor activity, lowering rates of asthma. People who live near areas where there's a lot of trees will be less likely to develop obesity. They'll be outside more, you know, doing a lot more physical activity. And it really also lowers the level of stress and anxiety. I know for myself, just taking a walk, you know, in an area where there's a lot of tree canopy coverage, you can automatically feel that sort of release and lessen, you know, of anxiety. And there's also studies found that recovery for patients that have been in the hospital is a lot quicker if they're in an environment that is really green. And then it also can help improve attention at school and at work. So there's this concept of Shinrin Yoku, or it's also known as forest bathing. And it originated in Japan, and it's a practice that aims to immerse and ground you in the natural environment. So when spending time in a natural environment or undergoing sort of like a nature therapy, just by, you know, taking a walk in a trail or hiking in the woods, it improves healthcare and healing by calming neuropsychological effects in the nervous system. It can also bring positive effects on hormone levels that benefit your physical health. And it demonstrated reductions in stress, anger, anxiety, depression, and sleeplessness in study participants as well. So in addition to, increasing your mental health, trees also improve our health by helping to lower annual healthcare costs in the country because less has to be spent on direct or indirect, costs for different issues. So direct costs being things like the values, is sort of the goods used to treat healthcare. So things like hospital bills, drugs, physician care, admin, research, things like that. And then indirect costs refers to the financial impact of illness. So, when people take more sick days, or that results really in less productivity. And so people at work not feeling well, there's also less productivity there as well. So if you look at this chart here, you can see some of the costs that are associated with some of these illnesses. So skin cancer, the total cost, direct and indirect, would be about $500 million. Physical inactivity, a direct cost $2.4 billion, indirect costs $4.3 billion. Cardiovascular disease has a total cost of about $13.6 billion, and respiratory diseases can lead to about $9.5 billion in costs. So adding 10 trees, to a block can improve our health perception. And so this is really equal to a raise of about $10,000 or feeling 7 years younger. So trees also provide a lot of community benefits, and entire communities can really benefit from a healthy urban forest because it increases feelings of community and connectivity. So research has found that there's a correlation between greener neighborhoods and reduced vandalism and graffiti as well. And this is likely because people want to go outside a lot more when there's a really nice sort of green neighborhood. It encourages people to spend time outside, and this can facilitate social interactions with each other and bring sort of more eyes in the neighborhood. So that reduces opportunities for negative behavior. So trees also provide a lot of residential economic benefits by, increasing property values. So in areas where there's a good view, it can add about 5 to 12% on the property value. Larger trees can add anywhere from 3 to 15%, and homes that are close to parks or open spaces can add about 8 to 10% more value on the home. So communities with higher tree cover have higher real estate value. And it's clear that trees, add value to homes. So communities with higher tree cover tend to have higher real estate value. So higher, property taxes. And although that might not be super, beneficial to the individual homeowner, it really, what happens with that is it's a benefit to the community because those taxes go into public programs and services. So trees also reduce energy use. So placing trees in certain areas strategically can help reduce air conditioning and heating costs. So for example, if you were to plant deciduous trees in the south west corners of your house, that will reduce air conditioning or cooling needs up to 40%. And then if you plant evergreens as sort of a blocking wind on the north side of the property, that can reduce heating needs by up to 10%. So Toronto's trees are estimated to reduce energy costs by about $8.2 million annually, which is quite significant. So just like residential benefits, there's a lot of commercial economic benefits that trees provide as well. So, you know, high quality landscapes result in higher rental rates, up to about 7% higher. And commercial districts can have increased business because people want to stay out longer in areas where it's really nice looking and there's pleasant spaces. And shoppers often claim that they'll spend, you know, almost 9 to 12% more time in districts with high tree canopy coverage. So urban forests provide habitat for both terrestrial and aquatic life through supporting nesting sites and shelter, and they cool the streams for aquatic life as well. And so trees also act as, you know, a crucial stopping ground for migrating birds and butterflies, and they also offer a food source for urban wildlife as well. So there is a big benefit of planting native trees, which is something that LEAF works on, as opposed to non-native trees. And this is because native species, what they do is attract native wildlife and increase native biodiversity, which is super important for maintaining our native landscape. And trees also provide, you know, really important ecosystem services. So Toronto's urban forest provides the equivalent of about $55 million in ecosystem services each year. So things like energy savings, emission reductions, air quality improvements, carbon sequestration. So the structural value of Toronto's urban forest is valued about $7 billion. And this would actually be the cost to replace every single tree that currently exists with a similar one in the city. So are all trees equal? We see a photo of a newly planted tree, and then on the other side here, there's a mature tree. The answer here really is no. Larger trees have larger leaves, larger root systems, and so they can provide a lot more benefits than newly planted trees. And so they provide a lot more, a much more significant contribution. And when you put it into perspective, kind of thinking about, you know, what a toddler can get done in a day as opposed to an adult. So bigger trees really equals more leaves, which equals more benefits. And you can see here sort of the dollar value of those benefits. So a newly planted tree with a diameter of about 5 centimeters can add about $1 to $9 in value, whereas a tree that's about maybe 20 years old has a larger value, $19 to $52, and then really mature trees that are 40 years old or larger with a diameter of about 40 centimeters can add up to $113 of value. So the urban forest is really, as we've seen, vital green infrastructure. And in recognizing the value of the urban forest, a report was developed by Green Infrastructure Ontario, which is an alliance of organizations that share a common vision for a healthy green Ontario. And this report sees the urban forest as vital green infrastructure, which provides services that cannot be replaced by gray infrastructure and whose value increases over time. So green infrastructure being, you know, strategically planned natural areas in urban settings. So things like parks, urban forests, green roof, things like that. And then gray infrastructure refers to human-made projects like concrete, roads, pipes, and so on. So currently, to replace 34 million trees in the GTA, it would cost about $14 billion. So if you're interested or curious about, you know, the value of trees on your property, there's a lot of really cool softwares out there that can help you do this. One of them is iTree. So this was developed by the USDA Forest Service, and it's a collection of tools to analyze and assess and manage forests. So that's what it's predominantly used for. And so what you could do though is if you have this application, you'd be able to assess the growth of the benefits of the trees in your property or within your community over time. So moving on here, what's happening with our urban forests? There's a lot going on. So first, one of the things is the diversity of tree species. Only about 10 species make up most of the species in the city of Toronto. So 10 species make up about 57.7% of the tree population. And you can see here most of them being white cedars. Then we have sugar maples at 10.2%. Norway maples at 6.5, white ash, Manitoba maple, green ash, and the ash trees are currently dying off because of a pest, which I'm going to talk about a little bit later in this presentation. So really, diversity is important. Increasing diversity of trees, tree species, can really ensure that a greater number of trees will survive and be more resilient to a large number of threats that are, continuing to increase year by year. And it will also help achieve a greater overall biodiversity within our urban ecosystems. So the distribution of trees in the urban forest decreased in all class sizes, except for smaller trees, which are those with diameters less than 15.2 centimeters. And so this change might have been, because of a factor because of the loss of mature trees to the emerald ash borer, and an increase in the annual tree planting over the last 10 years. So annually, there's about 120,000 trees and shrubs that are planted on public lands. So, that illustrates that the urban forest is regenerating naturally and through plantings, but not all trees are really reaching their potential growth due to various factors, a lot of stresses that are predominant in urban settings, for example, and it really impacts the growing conditions of these newly planted trees. So currently, with our changing climate and landscape, we're going to be getting a lot more storms that are going to increase in severity and frequency. So ice storms that are, increasing every year, getting worse, heavy rainfall, longer and more frequent droughts. This summer was really a hot one, and it did not really rain a lot at all. And there's going to be a lot of fluctuating temperatures, which could really impact trees in the urban setting. And so in addition to that, there's a lot of pressure for development, for building condos or houses, things like that. So what that means is a lot of land is going to be cleared, and then new trees are planted, in those areas. But as you can see from the photo below, there's not a lot of space for them to grow. So they really have to kind of survive in these dense, poor soils, which really stunts their growth and doesn't allow them to reach their full potential. There's also the issue of invasive species. And so warmer climates really mean that pests can survive a lot longer. And as globalization has happened and increases, it really increases the risk of introducing a non-native species that can quickly make its way over here and really can turn out to be quite invasive. So some of these images below, I guess the names of them got cut off, but there is dog strangling vine, which is extremely aggressive, a member of the milkweed family, and it's really established itself in southern Ontario as of now, and it's probably one of the more intense biological threats to the urban forest. So it really, what it does is essentially smothers native seedlings and saplings that are growing in those areas. And then in the middle here, we have gypsy moth, which is really native to Europe, but feeds on a lot of different types of tree species. And so it was first detected in Ontario in 1969, but widespread defoliation didn't actually happen until 1981. So it could take, some time. And really, populations of this moth are well established now in southern Ontario. And the insects, they overwinter in the egg stage, often on the barks of trees, and then in the spring they emerge to feed off of the foliage quite intensely. And then there's also the Asian longhorn beetle, which you can see here in the photo below. It's native to China and the Korean Peninsula, and it was first discovered in Canada on the boundary between Toronto and Vaughan in 2003. And then again, it was discovered in 2013. Oh, there are the names here. So dog strangling vine, gypsy moth, and then Asian longhorn beetle. So here, this might look familiar to some people. This is the emerald ash borer, the green, vibrant green bug that you see there, and its larvae, and the damage that this bug actually has caused to ash trees. So this bug attacks and kills all species of ash trees, and it was discovered in Michigan in June 2002, and so now it's widespread in southern Ontario. And what the larvae does is feed on the sapwood and bark, in between the sapwood and bark of a tree, and it cuts off flow of nutrients, which essentially kills the tree. So if you want to think about, you're drinking water and you've got a straw, and it's essentially kind of poking holes in the straw, which doesn't allow the nutrients to flow up the tree. So it suffocates and kills the tree essentially. So you can see here, this is a difference of after the bug kind of ravaged through the image 2006. Those are ash trees, healthy ash trees, and then the bug hit. And then in 2009, just 3 years later, significant defoliation. All of those trees are dead. And that ash trees had made up a large percent of the canopy coverage in Toronto. So in addition to, pests and diseases, urban trees face a lot of other stresses. And some of these are shown here. So you can see the first photo here where you have things tied around trees. It girdles them and suffocates them. Mature trees that are growing in sort of small areas where they're surrounded by concrete and there's construction being done. In the center photo here, you can see it cuts off the roots. There's also damage that can happen, on streets or in front yards where there's, if you're, with lawnmowers and things like that, that can damage the base of the trees. You can see in the photo there on the right. And then you also have trees that are experiencing a lot of soil compaction in these urban settings as well. So, there's a lot of stresses we talked about, a lot of damage that urban trees face. So what can you do to help? One of the things you can do in your own property or for the trees in your community is making sure that you're watering the trees regularly, especially the newly planted trees. You want to make sure you're watering in the early spring, when the ground thaws, until the fall, until the first frost. And you want to make sure you're watering about twice per week for the first 2 years after planting, specifically for newly planted trees and shrubs. And you can do this either using a soaker hose, leaving it on a slow trickle for about 20 to 30 minutes. And for young trees, about 6 gallons of water each time. This is equivalent to that, or 3 large watering cans. And for mature trees, you want to make sure you're watering up to the edge of the canopy. So that's a lot of ground, to cover. In addition to watering, mulching is really important. So mulch really, using natural wood chips, it breaks down and it feeds the tree. So mulch acts as many different things to benefit the tree. So it keeps the roots cool in the summer and adds warmth in the winter to protect from our really cold winters. It holds moisture in the soil. So when you're watering, when you place down the mulch and you water on top of the mulch holds in that moisture and then slowly releases it into the soil for the trees. It also helps prevent weeds. So it kind of acts as a natural weed barrier by, not allowing any weeds to sort of grow in that area. And it protects the space around the tree. So, if you're mowing your grass or things like that, weed whackers, using any of those kinds of equipment, the mulch kind of acts as a protective barrier so that you're not really going further than the mulch that's laid down there. And when applying mulch, this is really important, making sure that you're applying it the right way, because if you don't apply it the right way, it can really cause a lot of damage to newly planted trees. So the right way of mulching is really creating a donut shape around the base of the tree. So the photo with the check mark here, you want to make sure when you're laying down the mulch, it is in that donut shape and it's not touching the base. So you're pulling the mulch away from the base of the tree. You don't want to be placing mulch in a volcano shape around the base of the tree, because what that does is it increases sort of moisture buildup at the base, and in turn that can promote rot. So making sure that the tree has room to breathe is really important. So other things that you can do is help to protect against, things like chemical damage. These things can really affect trees: salt, pesticides, chemical fertilizers. Trying not to use these things near newly planted trees because they can do enough damage to kill them. And then also things like decreasing physical damage. So soil compaction, improper staking, improper pruning, cutting of roots, just making sure that you're not doing any of these things, or making sure that the area is free of all of this. Some other things you can do, when you're just out there taking a walk in your community, keep an eye out for the trees. Water and mulch where it's appropriate, wherever you can, and try to work with groups or individuals to correct improper tree care. So if you see, for example, a volcano mulch, you want to try to pull that back if it's possible to do so. And also, share tree care information. If you learn about watering, mulch, share this information with your neighbors, with your friends, with people in your community, so that all that knowledge is out there, and there's proper care being given to these trees. And that's everything. So thank you so much for having me here to speak with you. I unfortunately couldn't be in person, but I hopefully you would learn something today.